Have you ever had a friend who made you feel like your very existence was a threat to their happiness? My best friend, Kate, under the influence of her manipulative boyfriend Truman, essentially told me that my presence was too much for her to handle. They wanted me to dim my own light so she could shine. Little did they know, I was about to turn on a spotlight and expose the real reason for all this darkness. This story is about a line that was crossed in a friendship. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself against someone you care about, you'll know how hard this was. Stick around to see how it played out. There's a memory of Kate and me that I keep coming back to. A little snapshot in time from our junior year of college. It's vivid, almost cinematic in my mind. We were getting ready for the big spring formal, an event that, at 20, felt like it held the weight of our entire social existence. My dorm room was a controlled chaos of discarded dresses piled on my desk chair, open makeup palette dusting every surface, and a sweet, chemical haze of L-Net hairspray so thick you could practically taste it. A nostalgic indie pop playlist from the 2010 seconds was humming from a small speaker in the corner. I was wrestling with the delicate, stubborn zipper on a dark emerald silk dress I'd spent way too much money on. It was stuck, and I was contorting myself into a pretzel trying to reach it. Here. Let me. Kate's voice came from behind me. She was already a vision. Effortlessly perfect in a simple black gown that made her blonde hair look almost white under the harsh fluorescent lights. She smelled like the perfume I'd gotten her for her birthday. Her fingers, cool and practiced, brushed against my back, and with a gentle, sure tug, the zipper slid smoothly into place. I turned to face the long, cheap mirror propped against my closet door. She came up behind me, wrapping her arms loosely around my waist and resting her chin on my shoulder. We stared at our reflections together. Wow. Katesy, she said. And her voice wasn't just complimentary, it was a soft, genuine whisper of awe. Seriously, you wear that. And I swear no one is even going to see me tonight. I'll be invisible. I laughed. A real, full laugh. And bumped her hip with mine. Shut up. You look like you just stepped off a red carpet. I'm the one who should be worried. I'm not kidding, she insisted, though a wide smile was spreading across her face in the reflection. It's a damn good thing you're my best friend. Or I'd have to slash your tires. It's just not fair. That was us. That was our language. For 10 years. Our friendship had been built on that foundation of fierce, unwavering support and admiration so secure that it could be spoken out loud. Playfully wrapped in jokes about sabotage and jealousy. But always rooted in love. That memory feels like a dispatch from another planet now. Fast forward to the present. I was at my desk in the sun-drenched second bedroom of my Austin apartment that I'd converted into a home office. The afternoon light slanted through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The only sounds were the whisper-quiet hum of my iMac and the rhythmic, satisfying tap of my stylus against the drawing tablet. As a freelance graphic designer, my world was often this quiet. A solitary bubble filled with project briefs from clients, the infinite scroll of Pantone color palettes, and the obsessive quest for the perfect serif font. On my screen was a half-finished branding package for a new craft brewery opening up downtown. I was in the zone, nudging a vector point on a hop cone by a single pixel. When my phone buzzed on the polished wood of the desk, it was Kate. A photo popped up showing a chaotic scene of half-inflated balloons in shades of silver and black overtaking her living room. The caption read, SOS. Truman's 30th is going to be the death of me. Need your designer's eye for this color scheme. Is it chic or is it a funeral? A genuine smile touched my lips. Truman, her boyfriend of nearly 3 years, was a perfectly nice guy. He was a sales director at a big tech firm, armed with a blindingly white smile, a crushingly firm handshake, and an unshakable confidence. We got along well enough. We discovered a shared, passionate loyalty to the same out-of-state football team, a bond that led to the occasional flurry of texts during big games. He was a fixture in her life, a man she was deeply in love with, and by the transitive property of best friendship, he was a friend of mine. I typed back, definitely chic. Try grouping the silvers in asymmetrical clusters to break up the black. I sent her a quick, terribly drawn sketch to illustrate my point, and promised I'd come over Friday to help with the final setup for the big party on Saturday. The exchange was easy, familiar, and warm. It was the comfortable, well-worn fabric of our friendship. Everything was exactly as it should be. Until Wednesday evening, I was wrapping up my workday, archiving files and cleaning my tablet screen. When my phone lit up again, Kate's name glowed on the screen. I picked it up, expecting a last-minute question about cocktail napkins or playlists, but the words I read felt alien, like a message from a stranger who had somehow stolen my best friend's phone. Hey, weird question. You mind toning it down a bit for the party, and maybe send me a pic of what you plan to wear? I read the text once, and my brain simply refused to compute. It felt like trying to read a sentence in a language I didn't speak. I read it a second, and then a third time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. A slow, creeping heat prickled its way up the back of my neck. It was the physical sensation of humiliation, arriving before the emotion itself had even fully registered. Toning it down, the phrase was so condescending. Saw these missive. I thought of my closet, of the handful of nice dresses I owned. Was she picturing one of them? Was she preemptively telling me that I was too much? My thumb hovered over the screen. Paralyzed, my first instinct was to lash out. My second was to make a joke of it, to pretend she was kidding. But a cold knot was forming in my stomach, a gut feeling that this was no joke. I settled on forcing clarity. What do you mean by tone it down? I watched the screen, my heart starting to beat a little faster. The 3 little dots, the universal sign for someone is typing, appeared. They danced for a moment, then vanished. Then they reappeared. A full minute crawled by. A silent, digital tug-of-war. She was wrestling with her own words. Oh, you know. The casual, dismissive nature of her reply sent a fresh wave of heat through me. My patience, already stretched thin by the initial text, snapped. No, I actually don't. Kate, you're going to have to use your words and tell me what you mean. Another agonizing pause. The typing bubble flickered like a nervous tick. Finally, the message came through. Blunt and brutal. Do I really have to spell it out? I just want you to look basic. Normal. I don't want to be outshone at my own boyfriend's party. Basic. The word landed with a dull thud in the pit of my stomach. It was a word straight from a high school burn book, not from the mouth of my smart, compassionate, 30-year-old best friend. It felt like she had taken our 10 years of friendship, all the late-night talks, the shared secrets, the moments of mutual celebration, and tossed them into a bonfire. She wanted me to shrink myself, to willingly dim my own light so hers could appear brighter. Before I could even formulate a response, another text bubble popped up. This one felt different. The tone was formal, defensive, almost like she was reading from a script. It's a really important night for Truman. All his work friends will be there. Even his vice president. It's important that he sees me. You know, that he isn't distracted. It's about presenting a united front. The words were so bizarre. So corporate. Presenting a united front. This was a birthday party in Austin, Texas. Not a state dinner. It was the first jarring clue that these thoughts, these anxieties, might not be entirely her own. This was a seed of something else entirely. The initial sting of hurt was beginning to curdle into a cold, hard resolve. I was not responsible for managing her insecurities. I was not a prop to be styled and positioned to make her feel better. And I certainly wasn't responsible for keeping her boyfriend from getting distracted. I typed and deleted 3 different replies before settling on one that was calm, clear, and final. Kate, if my simple presence is going to cause you this much stress, then I think it's much better for everyone if I just politely decline the invitation. I will send Truman's gift over with Sarah. The response was instantaneous. A rapid-fire barrage of messages that made my phone vibrate nonstop. Wow. So you'd rather not come at all than not be the center of attention for one single night? That's so incredibly childish. Katesy. Unbelievable. After I asked you for help and everything. The accusation of me needing to be the center of attention was so wildly off the mark it felt like a form of gaslighting. It was a classic deflection, paint me as the selfish one to avoid confronting her own unreasonable demand. The conversation died there. I placed my phone face down on the granite countertop, needing a physical barrier from its toxic glow. My hands were trembling. Not with rage, but with a profound sense of sorrow. I paced the length of my small apartment, from the kitchen to the living room and back. The polished concrete floors cool beneath my bare feet. The quiet of the apartment, usually a comfort, now felt oppressive, amplifying the frantic, wounded thoughts circling in my head. An hour passed. An hour of heavy, suffocating silence. I opened my laptop, intending to lose myself in work. But I just stared blankly at the half-finished logo, the vibrant colors looking dull and lifeless. Then, a new buzz from the counter. I flinched. I expected it to be Kate, either with another attack or a half-hearted apology. But it was a different number. One I recognized from group chats but hadn't bothered to save. It was Truman. Hey, Katesy. Truman here. Heard you might be busy on Saturday night. That's a real bummer. I was really hoping you'd be there. Any chance you can move things around? I read his message. My blood running cold. It was so perfectly crafted. The breezy tone, the casual disappointment, the complete and utter lack of awareness. It was the text of an innocent bystander, a man completely oblivious to the grenade his girlfriend had just detonated. But I knew better. The phrase Truman here, as if I didn't know who he was, felt strangely formal, almost slick. He wasn't a bystander. He was a ghostwriter. I could almost feel his influence, his words echoing in Kate's strange, corporate-sounding texts. He knew. Of course, he knew. I felt a dizzying wave of anger and betrayal. This was a coordinated attack, and I had been too stunned to see it. I didn't reply. What could I possibly say? My phone buzzed one last time. I almost threw it against the wall, but I glanced at the screen, and the name made me pause. It was Sarah, one of our oldest mutual friends. My thumb, acting on a decade of instinct, swiped to open it. Hey, is everything okay with you and Kate? She's been acting so weird lately. especially since that night out with Truman's friends about a month ago. Sarah's text glowed on my screen. A single, unassuming sentence that landed with the force of a revelation. Especially since that night out with Truman's friends about a month ago. It wasn't just a random observation. It was a key. It was a key turning in a lock I didn't even know existed. And suddenly, a dozen confusing, disconnected moments from the past month began to click into place. It was the afternoon Kate had called me, sounding unusually quiet, to cancel our standing Sunday brunch. Citing a headache, it was the way she'd started asking vague, probing questions about my dating life, something she'd never shown much insecurity about before. It was the almost imperceptible way she'd started to pull back, a gradual cooling that I had attributed to the stress of her job or the demands of a serious relationship. I had been wrong. This wasn't a gradual drift. This was an event. A specific point on a map where the landscape of our friendship had been fundamentally altered, and it had happened on that night. Me fingers, no longer trembling, moved with a newfound purpose across the screen. I hit the call button next to Sarah's name. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, I was hoping you'd call," she said, her voice warm but laced with concern. "Is everything okay? You sounded tense in your text earlier." I sank down onto one of my dining chairs. The cool metal, a stark contrast to the heat, still simmering under my skin. Things are a little weird with Kate. Yeah. We had a disagreement about the party. I didn't elaborate. And she didn't press. Sarah was good like that. She knew how to listen to the spaces between the words. "That makes sense," she sighed, a knowing sadness in her voice. She's been on edge for weeks. It's like she's walking on eggshells around herself. Remember when we all went for tacos 2 weeks ago? She barely said a word and spent the whole time scrolling through Truman's Instagram feed. It was bizarre. "You said it started about a month ago," I prompted, keeping my voice even. "After she went out with Truman's friends. Do you know what happened that night?" "I don't know specifics," Sarah admitted. "I just know she was really excited to go. She said she wanted to make a good impression on Truman's inner circle. But the next day, she was different. Quieter. I asked her if she had fun, and all she said was, it was interesting. And when I asked what that meant, she just changed the subject. It's been like that ever since." We talked for a few more minutes, sharing other small, seemingly insignificant observations that, when stitched together, formed a troubling pattern. When we hung up, I sat in the growing twilight of my apartment, the city lights beginning to twinkle to life outside my window. The initial wound of Kate's words was still there. Adul. Throbbing ache. But now, it was accompanied by a different feeling, a cold, sharp-edged clarity. This wasn't about my dress. It wasn't about me wanting to be the center of attention. This was about Truman. And it was about whatever happened on that night. My mind replayed the few times I'd met Truman's friends at larger gatherings. They were a loud, Westeros bunch, all working in tech or finance, exuding the kind of easy confidence that comes with youth and a healthy stock portfolio. They were mostly a blur of polo shirts and expensive watches. But one face surfaced in my memory. Mark. He had a kinder, more open face than the others. I remembered he'd actually asked me about my design work, listening with genuine interest while the others were busy trying to one-up each other with stories of their latest sales commissions. He seemed decent. I knew it was a long shot, a desperate grasp at a thread. But it was the only thread I had. I scrolled through an old group chat from a barbecue last summer until I found his name. My heart hammered against my ribs as I typed out a message, my thumb hovering over the send button for a full 30 seconds before I finally pressed it. The plan was to start with a plausible excuse. A harmless little white lie. Hey Mark. It's Katie. Kate's friend. Random question. But I'm totally stuck on a 30th birthday gift for Truman. Have you guys all pitched in on something already? Don't want to get him the same thing? It felt like an eternity. But he replied less than 5 minutes later. Hey Katie, good to hear from you. Nah. We haven't. A few of us are just getting him a ridiculously expensive bottle of scotch. Can't go wrong with that. My fingers flew across the screen. Perfect. That's super helpful. Thanks, you're saving me from buying him yet another boring sweater. I paused, took a deep breath, and prepared to gently nudge the conversation in the direction I needed it to go. You guys must be so excited for the party. He's been looking forward to it for months. For sure. It's gonna be a big one. He's been a little stressed planning it. But Kate's been a rock star. This was my opening. Yeah. She has. Although, she's seemed a little off lately too. To be honest, a bit quiet. I think she's been stressed ever since that night you guys all went out to the Continental Club. Sounds like you guys had a wild time. Haha. I held my breath. The typing bubble appeared. Oh man. That night. Yeah. It was pretty funny. We all had a few too many. My phone started ringing. It was Mark. I answered. My palms suddenly slick with sweat. Hey, he said. His voice relaxed and friendly. Figured this was easier than texting. You're right. Kate was a little quiet after that night. Wasn't she? I think Truman put his foot in his mouth. I kept my voice light. Casual. Oh no. What did he do? Say something dumb about football? Mark laughed. It was a genuine, easy laugh. Completely devoid of malice. Worse. We were all telling stories about how we met our girlfriends. And someone asked Truman about his and Kate's story. He was already pretty deep into the whiskey at that point. And he starts telling this version of the story that was brutally honest. I guess I stayed silent, letting him fill the space. He told everyone that on the night he met both of you, he was actually trying to work up the nerve to talk to you all night. Mark said, the words tumbling out of him as if he were sharing a harmless piece of gossip. He said he thought you were gorgeous. But way out of his league. And this is the part where he's an idiot, he goes. Man, I knew I never had a shot with someone like Katie. So talking to Kate was the smarter play. She was more approachable. The whole table went dead quiet. It was so awkward. The world tilted on its axis. The air rushed out of my lungs. And for a moment, the only sound was a high-pitched ringing in my ears. Mark kept talking, but his voice sounded distant, like it was coming from the other end of a long tunnel. We all tried to save him. He continued, oblivious to the bomb he had just detonated. Told him he was a lucky guy to have Kate. Which he is, and he agreed. He went on and on about how much he loved her and was going to marry her someday. But the damage was done. Kate just sort of shut down for the rest of the night. I don't think she said another word. I felt so bad for her. He's a good guy. Just a clumsy drunk sometimes. You know, a clumsy drunk. The phrase was so inadequate, so insultingly simple for the calculated cruelty of what he had just described. Truman hadn't just made a drunken mistake. He had publicly framed Kate as his second choice. A consolation prize. A safe bet. And then, the final Horrifying piece of the puzzle clicked into place. He hadn't told Kate the truth. He had twisted the story. He had gone home and crafted a narrative where his friends had been the ones to make the cruel joke, where I was the object of their speculation, and where he was the noble boyfriend defending her honor. He had taken his own insecurity and his own careless words and weaponized them, aiming them directly at the bond between me and Kate. He hadn't just put his foot in his mouth, he had systematically poisoned my best friend against me. The request to tone it down wasn't Kate's insecurity, it was Truman's sick, manipulative masterpiece, designed to isolate her and confirm the lie he had told her. When I finally hung up the phone, the sorrow I'd felt earlier was gone. The hurt was gone. In their place was a feeling so cold and pure it felt like ice water in my veins. This was no longer about a ruined friendship or my own wounded pride. This was a rescue mission. Kate was trapped in a funhouse of mirrors, and the man holding the light was deliberately casting distorted shadows to make her hate her own reflection. And mine. I couldn't fight him by refusing to go to the party. That would only prove his point that I was selfish, that I was the problem. I had to go. I had to walk into the heart of his carefully constructed stage play and burn it to the ground. My plan formed with a startling, chilling clarity. It wouldn't be a dramatic confrontation. It wouldn't be a whispered warning to Kate. He was too good at twisting words for that. She would never believe me over him. No. The only way to break the spell was for her to hear the truth. Not from me, but from an unbiased source. From the mouth of the man who had just told me everything. I picked up my phone. My hands now perfectly steady. I opened my message thread with Kate. My finger hovering over the keyboard. I knew exactly what I needed to say. I had to feed his ego. And her hope. I had to make them believe they had won. Hey, I've had some time to think. You were right. I overreacted. And I'm sorry. It was childish. Of course I'll be at the party. I wouldn't miss celebrating Truman for the world. The text message, my carefully crafted apology, sat on the screen. It felt like a foreign object, a lie I had to tell to get to a much deeper truth. I had sent it into the digital void. And for a long, tense minute, there was only silence. My apartment, which had moments before been a command center for my newfound resolve, now felt like a waiting room. I watched the screen. My own reflection, a faint ghost on the dark surface, and waited for a response. It came. A single text bubble from Kate. Thanks. I appreciate you being mature about this. It means a lot to both of us. I read the words, and a bitter, humorless smile touched my lips. Mature. She was praising me for backing down, for accepting her demeaning request. There was a hint of condescension in it. A touch of a victor accepting a surrender. It was the exact response I had hoped for. And it felt like swallowing glass. It confirmed everything. They thought I was docile. They thought I was defeated. They had no idea I was just reloading. The next 2 days passed in a strange, surreal calm. On the surface, everything was normal. I completed my brewery logo project. I went to the gym. I called my mom. But underneath, my mind was a machine. Running calculations and scenarios, I felt a detached, icy focus I'd never experienced before. The hurt and anger were still there, but they had been packed down, compressed into a dense, solid core of purpose. Saturday evening arrived with the typical Austin warmth. The sky streaked with vibrant pinks and oranges. I stood in front of my open closet. The moment I had been mentally preparing for finally at hand. For a fleeting second, I considered wearing jeans and a simple top. To give them a hollow victory on that front. But I immediately dismissed the thought. This wasn't about defiance for the sake of it. It was about refusing to be diminished. My choice of clothing wasn't an act of war, but an act of self-respect. I chose a dress I had bought for a wedding last year but had only worn once. It was a simple, impeccably tailored sheath dress in a deep emerald green that complemented my eyes. It wasn't low-cut or flashy. It didn't scream for attention. It was just elegant, confident. The kind of dress a woman wears when she is comfortable in her own skin. As I zipped it up, I looked at my reflection. I didn't see a woman preparing for a party. I saw a woman preparing for battle. Armed not with weapons, but with the truth. The party was being held in a private room at a swanky, upscale restaurant on South Congress. The kind with valet parking and a quiet, competent saxophonist playing in the corner of the lobby. I handed my keys to the valet, took a single, steadying breath, and walked inside. The low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses hit me as soon as I entered the private room. It was beautifully decorated. All dark wood, low lighting, and tasteful silver and black balloon clusters exactly as I'd suggested. And there, in the center of it all, were Kate and Truman. They looked like a magazine advertisement for the perfect couple. He had his arm wrapped securely around her waist, his hand resting possessively on her hip. She was laughing up at him, her face glowing with adoration. They were a flawless portrait of happiness, and it made my stomach clench. I pasted a calm, pleasant smile on my face and began to move through the room. I had to play my part perfectly. I greeted people I knew, made small talk with Truman's colleagues, and accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. My eyes were scanning, always scanning, until I saw him. Mark was standing near the bar, talking with a couple of other guys. He was my target. But first, I had to pass through the lion's den. I made my way over to the happy couple. "There she is," Truman boomed, his smile widening, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Katie, I'm so glad you could make it. You look amazing." There was a subtle emphasis on the last two words, a tiny challenge in his gaze. "Happy birthday, Truman," I said, my voice smooth and even. I handed him a heavy, gift-wrapped bottle, a little something to celebrate the big 3-0. He took it, his eyes lighting up with genuine pleasure as he recognized the shape. "You shouldn't have." "Pappy Van Winkle, Casey. This is serious stuff." "Well, you're seriously old now, so it seemed appropriate." I yoked. Kate hugged me then. A brief, slightly stiff embrace. "I'm so glad you came," she whispered. And for a heartbreaking second, I heard my real friend in her voice. But then she pulled back, and her eyes flickered over my dress. A complicated, unreadable expression passing over her face before she smoothed it into a polite smile. The mask was back in place. For the next hour, I was the model guest. I mingled. I laughed at jokes that weren't funny. I listened to a tedious story from Truman's boss about a golf trip. All the while, my mind was a chessboard. I was aware of every movement in the room, tracking Truman, Kate, and Mark like a hawk. I needed the right moment. A natural, unforced opportunity where Kate was momentarily separated from Truman's orbit. It came just after 9 o'clock. Truman was pulled into a deep conversation with his vice president, a man whose presence demanded his full attention. Kate was left standing nearby, looking a little lost for a moment. At the same time, Mark had just finished his conversation and was heading back to the bar to refresh his drink. It was a perfect, fleeting confluence of events. It was now or never. I casually excused myself and walked over to Mark, intercepting him at the bar. "That whiskey treating you well?" I asked with a smile. "Hey, yeah. It's amazing. Great choice," he said cheerfully. "Having a good time." "It's a great party," I said, keeping my tone light. My eyes darted over his shoulder and saw Kate, still standing alone. "Kate, come over here, say hi to Mark." She looked over, a little surprised, but she dutifully walked towards us. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, but my hands were steady as I held my champagne flute. "Hey, Mark," she said, her smile a little strained. "Hey, Kate. You're looking great. Truman's a lucky guy," he said, ever the friendly diplomat. The air was filled with a moment of slightly awkward party chatter. This was it. I took a small sip of my champagne, lowered the glass, and looked at Mark with a bright, playful expression. "Mark, you have to tell Kate that hilarious story you told me the other day," I said, my voice filled with manufactured amusement. From that night at the Continental Club, the one about Truman thinking I was out of his league. I was trying to tell her about it, and she thought I was making it up. Time seemed to slow down. I had thrown the grenade, and now I could only watch it fall. Mark's friendly smile faltered for a fraction of a second. It shot a quick, nervous glance across the room at Truman, who was still locked in his conversation. A flicker of loyalty. A moment of, should I be telling this story? Oh, that he stammered, a flush creeping up his neck. Man, I don't know. It was just a bunch of dumb drunk talk. This was the critical moment. If he backed down, the plan would fail. I gave him a gentle, reassuring nudge, laughing as if it were the silliest thing in the world. "Oh, come on." It was hilarious. It's his 30th birthday. We're allowed to roast him a little bit. Kate can take a joke. Can't you? Kate. I had backed him into a corner. To refuse now would make it seem like a big, serious secret. Pressured, and likely not seeing the true harm. He relented. All right, he chuckled, turning to Kate. So, we were all telling stories, and Truman starts talking about the night he met you both. And he says, and he's totally wasted at this point, he says. Yeah. I saw Katie first and thought, no way. She's way out of my league. And then he looks at all of us and goes, so talking to Kate was the smarter play. She seemed more approachable. We all told him he was an idiot. But you know how he gets. Mark was telling the story as a funny anecdote, a testament to his friend's drunken foolishness. He had no idea he was delivering a verdict. I wasn't looking at Mark. My entire focus was on Kate. As she listened, something in her face began to collapse. It wasn't a dramatic, sudden shift. It was a slow, subtle crumbling. Her polite party smile froze, becoming a brittle, fragile mask. The light in her eyes, the happy glow she'd had all night, seemed to just drain away, leaving them dull and empty. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the stem of her wine glass. She wasn't blinking. She was just staring at Mark. Her expression a terrifying mixture of confusion and a dawning, sickening comprehension. The story he was telling was not the story Truman had told her. It wasn't even close. From across the room, Truman must have sensed the shift in atmosphere. Or maybe he just saw the look on Kate's face. His conversation ended abruptly. I saw his head turn, his eyes finding our small group. His charming, confident smile faltered. His eyes narrowed, and he immediately started moving towards us, his path cutting a straight, determined line through the crowd. He arrived in our small circle of chilling silence. The festive party noise seemed to fade into a distant buzz. "Everything okay over here?" Truman asked, his voice attempting a casual tone that didn't match the hard, suspicious look in his eyes. He wrapped his arm around Kate's shoulders, a gesture that was meant to look protective but came across as pure control. Mark looked deeply uncomfortable. I remained perfectly still. Kate didn't seem to notice Truman's arm. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Mark. Her eyes, now wide and shimmering with unshed tears, they were locked on Truman's face. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely a whisper, but it cut through the air with the sharpness of shattered glass. "You lied to me." Truman's arm, which had been a vice around Kate's shoulders, tightened for a split second. His charming, practiced smile was frozen in place, a grotesque mask that no longer fit. The ambient noise of the party, the soft jazz, the laughter, the clinking of glasses seemed to warp and fade, creating a pocket of dead, ringing silence around the four of us. Mark looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. He took a half step back, effectively removing himself from the blast radius, his eyes wide with the horrified realization that he had not, in fact, been telling a funny story. "You lied to me." Kate's whispered words hung in the air, fragile but incredibly heavy. For a moment, Truman didn't seem to have a response. His entire system, so perfectly calibrated for sales, pitches, and social maneuvering, appeared to have crashed. Then, his programming rebooted, and he defaulted to his primary function, damage control. He let out a short, forced laugh. "Honey, what are you talking about? It was a stupid joke from a month ago. Mark's had a few too many. Haven't you?" "Buddy." He shot a look at Mark that was less a friendly jab and more a direct threat. Mark, to his credit, just shook his head slightly, his expression miserable. But Kate wasn't looking at Mark. Her gaze was still fixed on Truman, and it was the unwavering, forensic stare of someone examining a lie under a microscope. "That's not what you told me," she said, her voice a little stronger now. "You told me they were the ones who made the joke. You told me you defended me. You made me feel insecure and crazy for weeks, letting me think Katie was some kind of threat. But it was you. It was always you." Truman's mask finally cracked. The charming smile vanished, replaced by a tight, angry line. His eyes darted to me, and the look he gave me was pure venom. The friendly acquaintance was gone. The manipulative stranger was now fully present. "Catesy," he said, his voice low and menacing. "What did you do? What have you been saying to her?" He was trying to pivot, to recast me as the serpent in their garden, the one who had poisoned his perfect Eden. I held his gaze and didn't say a single word. I didn't have to. This was her moment, not mine. My part in the play was over. I was just there to hold the light steady while she found her way out of the dark. Truman turned back to Kate, his grip on her shoulders becoming desperate. "Kate. Baby. Look at me. Are you really going to let her do this to us after everything tonight?" Of all nights, he was pleading now, his voice taking on a pathetic, wheedling tone. He was losing control of the narrative, and it was making him frantic. And then, in a move of such breathtaking, Audacious desperation. He reached for his last resort. He let go of her abruptly, his hands fumbling inside his suit jacket. For a horrifying second, I thought he was reaching for his phone or his keys. But then he pulled out a small, dark velvet box. The entire dynamic of the scene shifted. A few people nearby, sensing the dramatic change, fell silent. Their curious glances turned into fixed stares. Truman dropped to one knee. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. The awkward tension instantly transformed into a public spectacle. He opened the box, revealing a diamond ring that caught the low, ambient light, and threw it back in 1,000 tiny, brilliant daguets. "Kate," he said, his voice now loud enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear. "It was a performance. I was going to do this at the end of the night. I was going to tell you, in front of all our friends, that the last 3 years have been the best of my life. Don't let her ruin this. Don't let her poison our moment." His eyes were locked on hers, shining with a desperate, manufactured sincerity. "Marry me, Kate. Be my wife." The silence that followed was absolute. It felt like the entire city of Austin was holding its breath. Everyone was watching Kate, waiting for the joyful, tearful yes. This was the ultimate trump card. A public declaration designed to make a no socially impossible. He wasn't asking a question, he was issuing a command, confident that the pressure of the moment would force her to comply. I watched my friend. I saw the war on her face. I saw her eyes drop from Truman's desperate, pleading face to the glittering diamond in the box. That ring was a symbol of everything she thought she wanted: a future, a commitment, a life built with the man she loved. For a terrifying second, I saw her waver. I saw the pull of that imagined future, the desire for this horrible moment to be washed away by a happy ending, no matter how false. And then, something shifted in her gaze. She looked past the ring and truly saw the man on his knee before her. She saw the desperation not as a sign of love, but as a tactic. She saw the public proposal not as a romantic gesture, but as a hostage negotiation. She was seeing, for the first time, the full, unvarnished truth of the man who had claimed to love her while systematically eroding her confidence and isolating her from her best friend. She took a single, deliberate step backward. The movement was small, but it was an earthquake. "No," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it resonated with a finality that echoed through the silent room. Truman's face fell. "No. What? What do you mean?" "No." Kate looked at him, her expression no longer confused or hurt, but filled with a profound and devastating clarity. "You're not proposing to me, Truman," she said, her voice gaining strength with every word. "You're trying to silence me. You're trying to win." The mask didn't just slip from Truman's face, it shattered. The charming sales director, the confident man of the hour, the romantic fiancé, it all evaporated, leaving behind something ugly and raw. A wave of deep, crimson red washed over his face, a mixture of pure humiliation and incandescent rage. He snapped the velvet box shut. The soft click sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. He pushed himself up from the floor, his movements jerky and stiff. He didn't look at Kate. He didn't look at me. He stared at a fixed point on the far wall. His jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitching. He muttered something under his breath, a single, venomous curse, and then he turned. He walked, fast and straight-backed, through the crowd of his own stunned guests, out of the private room, and disappeared from his own 30th birthday party. The moment he was gone, it was as if a spell had been broken. The air rushed back into the room. A low murmur of shocked conversation erupted around us. People started looking away, suddenly deeply interested in their drinks or their shoes, trying to give the illusion of privacy where none existed. Kate just stood there, swaying slightly, her eyes fixed on the empty doorway where Truman had vanished. A single, shuddering breath escaped her lips. A sound of profound, ragged exhaustion. And then, the tears came. Not the angry, hurt tears of a woman who had been betrayed, but the quiet, streaming tears of a prisoner who had just been set free. I stepped forward and gently put my arm around her shoulders. She sagged against me, and I could feel the tremors running through her entire body. I didn't say, "I told you so." I didn't say, "Are you okay?" I didn't say anything. There were no words for this. I just stood there with her, a silent, solid presence in the wreckage, holding her up as she cried. We left without saying goodbye to anyone. I led her through the lobby, past the curious glances of the other restaurant patrons, and out into the warm, humid Texas night. I gave the valet ticket to the attendant, and we waited in silence for my car. The drive back to my apartment was quiet. Kate stared out the passenger window, the passing streetlights illuminating the tear tracks on her face. I didn't push her to talk. I just put on some soft, instrumental music and drove. A few weeks later, we were sitting at a small table outside our favorite coffee shop, the one where we'd spent countless hours dissecting everything from bad dates to career crises. The late afternoon sun was warm on our faces. It was the first time since the party that things felt almost normal. Kate stirred her iced latte, the ice cubes clinking softly against the glass. She hadn't spoken much, but it was a comfortable silence now. Not a tense one. "I'm sorry, Katie," she said finally, her voice soft. She finally looked up and met my eyes. For everything. For what I said in those texts. For believing him. For letting him get between us. I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You were being manipulated." "I know," she said, a fresh wave of tears welling in her eyes. "But I should have known better. I should have trusted you." "He's good at what he does," I said quietly. "He made you feel like you were the crazy one. That's how they work." She nodded, wiping a tear away with the back of her hand. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For not giving up on me, even when I was being a horrible friend. You didn't do it to get back at him. You did it to save me." I squeezed her hand. "That's what we do," I said. "We save each other." A real, genuine smile finally touched her lips. It was small, and a little sad. But it was there. It was the first one I'd seen in a long time. We both knew it would take time to heal completely. That the shape of our friendship might be a little different now. Scarred over but stronger in the broken places. But in that moment, sitting in the warm autumn sun, I knew we were going to be okay. I had walked into that party expecting a confrontation, maybe even a fight. But looking at my friend, really seeing her for the first time in months, I realized this was never about revenge. Revenge is about settling a score. This was about restoring a balance. Sometimes, the greatest act of justice isn't about tearing someone down. It's about building someone you love back up. And there is no victory sweeter than watching someone you care about find their own light again.